travel along Catholic pilgrims for 1 year as we read through St. Faustina's diary. Join me, Amy Thomas, each day for a short reading out of the diary which brought us a deeper understanding of Christ's divine mercy. Hello everybody! Welcome to day 104 of our readings from St. Faustina's diary. So today we are going to be listening to Father Sapotsko, her confessor, talk about the 3 degrees in the accomplishment of God's will. So that's pretty heavy. Sounds like it, right? But that is what we're going to talk about on the other side. So our readings today are from Notebook 1, numbers 440 through 444. O my Creator and Lord, my entire being is yours. Dispose of me according to your divine pleasure and according to your eternal plans and your unfathomable mercy. May every soul know how good the Lord is. May no soul fear to commune intimately with the Lord. May no soul use unworthiness as an excuse, and may it never postpone accepting God's invitations, for that is not pleasing to the Lord. There is no soul more wretched than I am, as I truly know myself, and I am astounded that divine majesty stoops so low. O eternity, it seems to me that you are too short to extol adequately the infinite mercy of the Lord. Once, the image was being exhibited over the altar during the Corpus Christi procession, June 20th, 1935. When the priest exposed the Blessed Sacrament and the choir began to sing, the rays from the image pierced the sacred host and spread out all over the world. Then I heard these words, "These rays of mercy will pass through you just as they have passed through this host, and they will go out through all the world." At these words, profound joy invaded my soul. Once, when my confessor, Father Sapotsko, was saying Mass, I saw, as usual, the child Jesus on the altar, from the time of the offertory. However, a moment before the elevation, the priest vanished from my sight, and Jesus alone remained. When the moment of the elevation approached, Jesus took the host and the chalice in his little hands and raised them together, looking up to heaven. And a moment later, I again saw my confessor. I asked the child Jesus where the priest had been during the time I had not seen him. Jesus answered, "In my heart." But I could not understand anything more of these words of Jesus. On one occasion, I heard these words, "I desire that you live according to my will in the most secret depths of your soul." I reflected on these words, which spoke very much to my heart. This was on the day of confessions for the community. When I went to confession and had accused myself of my sins, the priest, Father Sapotsko, repeated to me the same words that the Lord had previously spoken. The priest spoke these profound words to me. There are 3 degrees in the accomplishment of God's will. In the first, the soul carries out all rules and statutes pertaining to external observance. In the second degree, the soul accepts interior inspirations and carries them out faithfully. In the third degree, the soul, abandoned to the will of God, allows him to dispose of it freely, and God does with it as he pleases, and it is a docile tool in his hands. And the priest said that I was at the second degree in the accomplishment of God's will, and that I had not yet reached the third degree, but that I would strive to attain it. These words pierced my soul. I see clearly that God often gives the priest knowledge of what is going on in the depths of my soul. This does not surprise me at all. Indeed, I thank God that he has such chosen persons. So what we're going to talk about today is what Father Sapotsko was talking to Sister Faustina about, the 3 degrees of accomplishing God's will. And the first one he talks about is when the soul carries out all rules and statutes pertaining to external observance. And I would probably say that these are following the 10 Commandments, following and practicing the doctrines of the Catholic Church, doing all those things that the Church has laid out for us to follow in order to live in this world. So there are things that aren't directly covered in the Bible that the Church then has to guide us on. And so following those rules that the Church has laid down, being obedient to, the different doctrines of the Catholic Church is probably, I would say, that first degree. And I would say that, a lot of good Catholics reach that level. A lot of people want to follow the Ten Commandments very well. We don't always get it perfect, but trying to follow that very well and trying to follow and adhere to the teachings of the Catholic Church. There are a lot of people who do try to strive for that and follow it, pretty well, I would say. The second one is when the soul accepts interior inspirations and carries them out faithfully. So, when you get that nudge, that push from God that says, hey, Amy, I would really like you to do this. Like do a reading of Sister Faustina's diary for a whole year. And you follow through with that nudge, that internal inspiration. Nobody else put that on my heart or my mind. I was just sitting on my bed one day and looking at the diary, and it just really came into my soul, and I was very strong. And I didn't question it a lot. I kind of went with it. So I think that's what he's talking about. No, I'm not saying that I do this 100% all the time and I do it 100% well all the time. I'm just saying it's something like that. Him asking her to get this image up and to get the message of divine mercy out to people. And we've seen her struggle with wanting to do it or being unsure if this is really coming from Christ. And, she talks to her confessors, and she eventually, obviously, does do what those internal inspirations nudge her into doing. And so I think that's what the second level is. In how often you get internal inspirations, I guess is probably dependent on each person, but being very attuned to God speaking to your soul, the Holy Spirit speaking to your soul. There have been times when, I've been, walking down the street and there'll be somebody sitting on the ground who is, either begging for food or begging for money or something like that. I remember one time very, very distinctly. I was living in Las Vegas and I went to the grocery store a little late at night, and it wasn't super, super late, but I was there by myself and I had gotten a little bit of what I needed. I went out to my car, I got in my car, and there was a man sitting on a bench near the grocery store. Now, this was a nice part of town. It wasn't like I was scared or anything. And I pulled up to the stop sign, and he looked hungry, and it was kind of a chilly night, and there was something in my soul that just said, Amy, go help this man. And I didn't. And the justification that I used was, well, I'm a woman. It's kind of dark outside. He's a guy. I don't know him. I want to be safe. And that was legitimate. That's a legitimate thing to say. That's not crazy or out of the realm. However, the internal inspiration that I had was very, very overwhelming. Like, I had seen homeless people before, and yes, I always wished I had something that maybe I could possibly give them, but I didn't at that time. But this time was like a push in the back. And I started driving, and that justification that I came up with just wasn't cutting it for me. And I kept saying, just turn around, Amy. Just turn around. You don't have to get close to him. Just tell him you'll go in and buy him some food. Bring it out to him. There's people out walking around going into the grocery store. You'll be okay. And I didn't turn around. And it really bothered me. Really bothered me. So much so that I went to confession, and I told the priest that I had really ignored this guy, that I had come up with all these excuses. And the priest said, well, the excuses that you came up with are not, bad excuses. It was night. He's a strange man. You don't know who he is. Being a woman all by yourself, that's understandable. You're not sinning. And I was like, yeah, but Father, the push was great. And he's like, yeah, I know sometimes that does happen, and we don't heed the call. And I said, I just really feel like I let God down. And he said, well, okay, maybe you did, but why don't you try to think of ways that you can be better prepared next time. So I got together with my kids and we went to, like the dollar store and the grocery store, and we put together some bags for homeless people with necessities and some non-perishable food items and stuff like that. And I kept bags in my car so that if that ever happened again, I could just hand it to them. And so that's what we did. And I still felt really bad about what I had done, but there wasn't anything I could do to change it then, but it was a big internal inspiration. I don't know why that guy specifically, maybe he really hadn't eaten in a very long time and needed some help. I don't know. It stuck with me. So we have to be paying attention to those things. And like I said, that kind of really big push doesn't happen to me often, but it does happen. And I would wager that it happens to most of us, at least somewhat of the time. And just paying attention to that is definitely something that we can all be more aware of. Now, the third level is the complete abandonment to the will of God. And even her confessor says, you haven't quite made it there yet. You're going to strive for it. I know you will, but you're not there yet. And gosh, looking at that, the complete abandonment of the will to the will of God seems so huge. And you just sit there and go, man, how many of us ever really get to that level? But we have lots of saints to show us that it is attainable and it is something that we can and should strive for, though it seems very, very difficult. But remember, on our own, we cannot get to the third level. We cannot. We need the graces. We need to be close to Christ. We need to be praying and talking to Him, reading His Word, going to Mass. That's how we get to that higher level, is being directly connected to Him as much as possible. So, don't look at this as, oh man, well, I'll probably always stay in level 1, because you can read that and kind of think that like I did. But just know, we have had lots and lots of saints up and down the ages. We've got saints out there right now working hard. If we are baptized Christians, that is our calling. So it is not out of our realm of possibility, and Christ will help us do it if we just ask Him. So that is all for today, Catholic Pilgrims. I will see you back here for day 105. And until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.